Welcome to the Pullman Police Advisory Committee. We are the liaison between the community and the police department. And today we have some guests with us, and we will introduce them in a moment here. First, I want to look at getting the minutes approved. Did everyone get a chance to look at August minutes for the meeting? Darby and I just talked about a couple of quick changes on the second page to change my name over just a couple of times, and I'm just going to write that in here. And as long as everyone approves the minutes, we are good to go on that.
Motion to approve.
Would you like a motion?
Yep. Do I have a motion? Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Okay. So we have Sergeant Sorem and Elizabeth Schaeffer here.
Not here yet.
Not here yet. Maybe, are we going to have two separate presentations for City Code today? Or are you guys kind of working together on this
I
presentation?
think Liz is doing the city code presentation.
Okay,
The chief
yeah.
didn't ask me to do anything.
Okay, you're
regarding
doing the police update, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so we're going to have Sam Sorem doing the police update today, and then Elizabeth Schaeffer is going to be doing a presentation on code enforcement in Pullman, which is going to be interesting because a lot of people have questions about what code enforcement it is and how is it operated within the police department. Hi, welcome. So maybe we will do our poll first. We will go around. Richard can start us if he wants to, and we'll see what's going on in the neighborhoods, and then we'll move on to our presentation.
Well, I can deal quickly. I have nothing.
Nothing. I was hoping for something more exciting.
Okay.
All right, Bill Holman, Principal Franklin Elementary School, Pullman School District Representative. Business is great in the Pullman School District. I think I mentioned that we had a lot of kids on paper, and now we have a lot of kids in body as well, you know, as school gets started. So I don't know the overall district enrollment. I know that the enrollment at Franklin Elementary School is higher than it's ever been. And it's similar at the other elementaries as well. So again, we're working to find places to put everyone in pending our new elementary school. So it'll be online in a couple of years here. So and I say that positively. Business is good. So I just received an email from Officer Scott Patrick regarding DARE education at the elementary level. He set a schedule for DARE at all three of the elementary schools, and it was determined that DARE start earlier, and that would be more fruitful if the students, if that education began right at the beginning of the year, so that the rest of the year could be utilized to reinforce some of the things that the teachers and the students are working on, and that's been a really successful model. And I just wanted to voice appreciation to Officer Patrick for his role in our schools, working with the kids, his personal approach, and I think the effectiveness of that training. We're able to as we deal with the inevitable sometimes mistake making that we do as we're learning how to go through life, kids and adults both, I guess. As we deal with that, we're able to call up some of the things that they're being taught, you know, and ask them to kind of reflect in the framework of those lessons. So I appreciate that happening in our schools, and would always be supportive of it continuing. So that's what I've got today.
Thank you.
Marcy Gilliland, Pullman High School parent representative. I have nothing to report.
Eric Tetzloff, business alternate. Just nothing to report on, particularly business-wise, I thought. That was that fun festival thing for pretty well, I think, so I don't know.
Yeah.
It's been a busy start to the school year at WSU. Had a lot of student events and things that we're doing there to help keep people occupied and busy, doing good things, but can't catch everybody all the time. But It's been a nice start to the school year, and excited to see where we go from here.
All right, so I'm Corey Woodley. I'm the chair of the Police Advisory Committee, and we just had our Lentil Festival, so I think that's exciting to talk about, and it was very successful. We had a lot of people come by the booth, so we were able to reach out to the community, let them know that we're here for the community. I think that's a very good thing for us to be at. There's a lot of locals that go to this event as well. So I think that was successful. When it comes to stuff going on WSU's campus, I think things have been hectic. There's a lot of students running around, a lot of things going on, but everything seems to be going well.
Justin Stewart, business representative. Nothing to report.
I'm Phyllis Stallcop, Sunnyside Hill representative, and I also have nothing to report.
I'm Barbara Hammond, College Hill. I can report, as I have every year at this time, that there's a lot of trash and glass on the sidewalks and the roads on Sunnyside Hill, which makes walking one's dog unpleasant and nerve-wracking. So we're looking forward to Adopt a Block the beginning. And then Matt, maybe you have something from other parts of College
I
Hill.
do, actually. The only constituency problem that I've been hearing is they wanted an update on the current pending case with the football players and the parties over the summer. They're just hoping for an update at some point.
Well, that's one of the things that the chief said, basically the assault investigation involving WSU football players. I am assuming this is the one that happened at the, I'm not sure if it was a fraternity or if at a live out, but still being investigated, and they're going through approximately 50 witnesses that have been interviewed.
Okay.
The more recent assault, Detective Lamley is doing that, and Friday I was reviewing statements, and I know she was hoping to get it sent over to the prosecutor then, but the reason I was reviewing it is because her supervisor was out on medical leave, but he is back today, Sergeant Opgenorth, and so I didn't hear that it went over to the prosecutor, but I know that it's very close.
Thanks, Sergeant.
There is another case going over. I don't have a name for you. I was told to me just in briefing a few minutes ago that we had an assault earlier in the latter part of the summer involving what it turned out to be a football player who apparently assaulted somebody and took some beer from them. And they just made an arrest today on that. And he's being booked and released from our facility, so he's not taken to jail. So I'm sure there'll be a press release, and I'm sure the chief, or in this case it'll be Sergeant Opgenorth, will be fielding a lot of phone calls from the press tomorrow. But we have that coming up. So.
Matt, did you have anything else to report?
Oh, no.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So, Sergeant Sorem, would you like to do the police update right now? Would that be okay?
I can do that, or I can do that, and if Liz isn't here by the time I'm done, I'd be happy to talk to you about code enforcement. I supervise all three of them as I change shifts and they change shifts.
That would be perfect, thank you.
Done plenty of it myself, so yeah, I'll go over it's basically, I don't have any secret information. The chief provided me a list. We hired a new police officer today. She just came on board. Her name is Tiana Dillon, and she is slated to go to the academy October 4th, when she'll get out February 14th. And she's currently assigned to Officer Chris Engel as her field training officer. As far as our records recruitment goes, we're still conducting interviews. The police technology specialist position recruitment, the applications are being accepted through September 28th. I've already mentioned the assault investigation involving the WSU football players. The chief made a body-worn camera presentation at the Department of Homeland Security Video Quality in Public Safety Workshop, which was in Seattle at the end of August through September 1st. And he'll be making another body-worn camera presentation at a forum in Coral Gables, Florida, which is where he is right now. And he'll be making a presentation on storage, cloud versus in-house, presentation on current trends in body-worn cameras, We have our first home football game was September 3rd. We didn't have any significant issues, and our next home game is coming up on the 17th. In September 20 to 21, the chief will be attending some training in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, for personal radiation detection, and that's training that the federal government puts on, I think, on an annual basis. And we will be receiving free detectors for use by our staff when responding to response alarms at the WSU's nuclear reactor. The chief has met with the new supervisor for our area, for the Department of Corrections, who's based out of Clarkston, and he has offered to have them make a presentation to you sometime next year, and says that they would like to. And apparently we had a constituency poll involving a complaint of roosters in the 1400 block of Southwest Center, and according to the department, the planning department, the owners have gotten rid of the roosters. So.
Any comments from the audience on that one? It would be very great to have someone here from the Department of Corrections to give that kind of presentation. What does the committee think about that? Something like that?
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Perfect. Rooster.
You want to talk about code enforcement?
Well, we might as well move on. Let's talk about code enforcement. And
Well,
here.
as long as you'll understand that I don't have hard numbers. I mean, I can't recite how many parking tickets and vehicles were impounded and dogs running at large and things like that. But and I would encourage you to ask questions, because I obviously am going to be, if you'll pardon the expression, shooting from the hip. But code enforcement in Pullman is typically handled by several different departments. The planning department handles zoning issues, and the police department handles more of the nuisance violations and the animal violations, traffic violations, city code pertaining to noise, things like that. So one of the keys, I think, to successfully dealing with code violations is first determining which department handles it. To give you an example, if we have somebody that calls in a complaint of a vegetation overhanging a stop sign or a no parking sign, you have to know that it's the Parks Department that deals with that. Oh, here's Liz. I'm going to just turn it over to her.
Okay, we were just getting an introduction to code enforcement and just getting in.
Yeah, you got me in my first minute or two.
So what were we talking about?
Explaining that different agencies within the city, different departments handle different areas of code violations as far as zoning and planning and stuff.
Oh, do I?
Yeah, sorry about that.
So you would like me to explain the different departments who handle different complaints?
And then what we handle.
Okay, well, I'll get a lot of complaints that don't belong to me, so I like forwarding those on. Most of those are signs covered in vegetation, sidewalk obstructions, anything in the public right of way that can't be identified to a particular person or house. So things like garbage cans or people don't have garbage service. So I'll usually find out from the people who live at the residence if they have service or not, and I can forward that on to the community improvement services, which is Steve Murphy. Most of the things that I deal with are parking problems, nuisance trash, nuisance garbage, junk, stuff like that. Any collection of objects of any nature. Basically, it's pretty vaguely written, so it covers a lot of things. What other things would you like me to discuss? Parking enforcement, of course.
And how about the process for dealing with abandoned vehicles?
Yeah, if you have a car that's stored on the street for long term, we have a 168-hour ordinance, which is I'll go and check on the vehicle, chalk a tire, post a notice on the vehicle, gives them 7 days to remove it. If it's not moved, it can be towed. A lot of people think that if it's in front of their house that they have a right to put it there as long as they want, and that's not really the truth. The truth is it's public parking available to everyone, so therefore you need to have movement of vehicles and availability for everyone. So that can go with boats, trailers, regular cars, anything stored on the curbside even. Like if someone has a pile of gravel, stuff like that, that all has to have a disturbance permit, streets disturbance permit, so you can't really store things like that in the public right of way. So animal control, of course, but that's probably not as big of an issue for you. Piles of vegetation that haven't been moved forever or dumping. I work with the stormwater services on some larger projects of that nature, like where contractors are storing large piles of just junk contracting materials, stuff like that, that are kind of in the newer neighborhoods. As they're up and coming, then they need to, like, as there's things out of there and start having an orderly, living area for the people who live there. I mean, basically, it's any kind of complaint you can think of.
Well, what's important, I think, to understand is that code violations are, in the big scheme of things, they're minor violations of law, excuse me, but they're huge when it comes to quality of life issues. Mm-hmm. It's the person who's sick and tired of their neighbors parking on their lawn, or whether they're playing music, or whether they have too many people living in the house, or it is that pile of gravel that somebody had dumped in front of their driveway and they haven't done anything with it. And so the kinds of violations and most of those complaints come first to the police department, either a call to dispatch or a direct call to Liz, or by web-based complaints. And so they come to Darby, and then she tries to figure out who to send them to, and if it's within our department, then we handle them. And it should be, I think, also noted that the code violations are on the rise. And of course, when our population increases so drastically in the fall, we have a whole slew of people who are oftentimes living on their own for the first time. And so they don't understand that if their landlord hasn't provided garbage service, if you've heard the ad by Devin Felstad on the local radio about the recycling bins that are full of garbage, well, I've got them all up and down my street. People they don't have a clue that it says don't put garbage in here, but they do. And so who do you complain to? You can initially complain to the police department, and then we can deal with it, but then so can Steve Murphy over at City Hall. And the things with, we have a citizen here in town that, this is according to Steve Murphy, in the wintertime will walk around and fill his voicemail box full of complaints about people that don't shovel their sidewalk. And he's a one-person outfit, and so we end up fielding a lot of those calls. And if you are a property owner and you do shovel your own sidewalk, you know how annoying it is to be walking somewhere and deal with people that don't. But we have one person technically in the city that takes care of that.
Do you guys have a recommendation for how a person living in the city should report a complaint? Should they call the main line, or should they call you directly? Do you have a recommendation for that process?
So the online submissions, I would say if you don't want an immediate response, then that's not the way to go, because we juggle a lot of different calls, and we have outstanding cases we work on as well. So your call for service through dispatch is going to get priority. They're all treated as priority as a new call, but we have to juggle a lot of things. So therefore, if you want immediate, especially for parking violations that are gone in 5 minutes or gone in a half an hour, we're going to check on those over the weekend. They will have gotten a submission online about a parking problem, and it's not there 2 days later when, parking is on. So if that was dispatched through our dispatcher, an officer would be able to go. Nuisance violations, it's nicer. You can kind of explain out everything. For if you do the online submission, it's through dispatch. You don't really want to tell them your whole story over dispatch, but I would say it just depends on how much priority you want placed on that, because I'm going to use my own discretion to try to deal with the more important things or the more pressing things first. So, and that be animal calls, vicious animals, animal bites, things that are a public safety issue as opposed to an attractive nuisance. So those would be that's what I would, just knowing how I handle calls and how I juggle things around, it'd probably be best if you wanted immediate attention to have, go through dispatch. Otherwise, if you're just wanting to submit it and get it taken care of, you can do email. The online submission, I'm guessing My PD app as well, so it all gets to us multiple times sometimes, so,
Well, and if a citizen calls in any complaint to the dispatch center, the dispatch center will, even if it's a parking complaint or an animal complaint and Liz or Emily, they're not working, they'll dispatch an officer. And then we have a contract that we abide by that basically dictates at what times we will handle animal control problems. And so some calls might get put on hold, but at least you have the supervisor making that call. Like, okay, somebody calls up and says their neighbor's dog's been barking for days, but not right now. And so that kind of a call we're going to hold for when the code enforcement officers are working. But if it's a parking problem, other than an abandoned vehicle, like if they want to call in the car that's been parked for a month on the road, that can usually wait. Because most of the abandoned vehicle calls and most of the nuisance calls and most of the animal violations are going to require follow-up. A lot of time, and so when I'm reviewing Liz's and Emily's reports, very, very seldom is it a one-page report. It's like I got a report of these dogs running at large. I responded. I talked to the person. The dogs didn't have licenses, so I asked the person if they were current on their rabies and were they going to get a license, and they said yes, they would. And then I checked back a week later, and they haven't, and so I've called them again. And I mean, if you just want to give them a ticket, it would be a lot quicker. But because they tend to work for compliance more than they do enforcement or punishment, I should say, they have a lot of follow-up to do, more than I would say the average officer has on his calls. So.
Yeah, I would say education is my approach first
I guess that's
for
the word
most
I was
everything. I will give a little grace and I will really try to explain things very well so they know exactly, like for code violations, if they have garbage, I'm like, if it ain't a stick or a rock or something in your yard, it's got to be in the garbage can. Like I have to get that specific with people because otherwise you're visiting them once, twice, 3 times and you're like, so did you not look at this area over here? Like that's garbage, stuff like that. So it can be pretty detailed and I like to train people how to do it right, or else you're just going to be going back there every weekend doing that stuff. So, I like to educate people, and I never feel bad writing a ticket after that process because you've given them plenty of grace, you've given them plenty of information and know-how, and there should be no problem. They're young, they can clean up after themselves, and there's really no reason not to get things done. Unless there's a couple places around town that they've been digging in like a tick for 10 years, and those are longer processes. They take months, maybe 6 months sometimes for the larger code violations. So, it just depends. But I write plenty of tickets as well. So, and sometimes you just got to do that. So, yeah.
Do we have other questions?
Could you explain getting a street disturbance permit?
Okay, that's done through the planning department up over here, up on the second floor up there. A lot of that's for if you're going to be doing contracting, you're going to be blocking sidewalks, you want to put a dumpster on the curbside where a vehicle would go, piles of gravel because you're going to be landscaping. You can't store those in the street without proper posting, they want you to set things out so cars don't just drive into them and stuff like that. So, and I don't know, I think the fee is nominal. You go and fill an application out, they tell you, yeah, you can do it and do it this way, and then it's usually fine.
So you're not issuing permits for an RV?
No, they can park, RVs are free, you can park free.
Well, I know, but one that doesn't move after 168 hours.
Right, if they don't move, they get a parking ticket.
Okay, so.
Or they get towed.
Planning, under the zoning laws, there's actually a law against living in an RV for, I think it's more than 10 days in a row. And again, that's one of those that unless you've been here a long time and dealt with it, you'd never know to look in the zoning code for that.
Yeah, there are some weird animal even things that are listed in the zoning that people don't even know about, and so you just over time you figure out where everything is and what the rules are. So
What about noise complaints? Is that code enforcement that handles that, or is that the police
That's law,
department?
that's
And-
police.
And how is that handled, like warnings and times and?
Well, there's a fair amount of discretion written into the ordinance. In the olden days, it used to be if you got a complaint, you'd go and give the person a warning. If you got a second complaint, you'd give a ticket. Now we have the option of giving another warning or giving a ticket on the first violation. A lot of the guys use, they have a standard of reasonableness, which is, if they come up to a party and the speakers are pointed in and it's nearby neighbors that are making the complaint and it's obvious that, they just showed kind of poor judgment as far as how late they were going, a lot of times they'll get a warning. But if on the same party they go and the complaint is from across town and the speakers are pointed out, obviously with the intention of drawing a crowd and advertising the fact that they're having a party, especially if they've been warned prior, and we encourage the officers to check our records to see if that's the case, then they could very well get a ticket. So
I would handle animal noise. That's also kind of a contact the homeowner, try to get a solution reasonably quickly, depending on what the severity is, what time of night, how loud the dog is, different things. There's a lot that goes into it. There's a daytime and a nighttime violation that I can write for that. A lot of times it takes either two people from different residences to actually for me to write a ticket, or if I feel it's bad enough based on my experience, I can be the second complainant and issue that ticket. So there's a lot of leeway there, but most of the time I'm able to reach people and they make changes, and that helps.
But in all these cases, we have people that call in and they want to be anonymous. And it's like, that doesn't work that way. It's like we have to have an identifiable reporting party. And in the case of animal noise violations, before you write a ticket, you have to be able to say that you were at the reporting party's residence or their property, and you could hear the dog barking yourself.
I'm going to make a complaint. I think I'm going to make a complaint. Do you trap skunks?
That
would be a
we don't
no.
trap anything.
I don't have a complaint.
I can refer you to an excellent.
It's not involving a skunk, but the sergeant raised the issue. These things sound very minor, but it's a major thing for me. Last spring, a mother rabbit had a litter in a flower pot on my back patio. And as the little rabbits got bigger and started moving around, the neighborhood cats ate them all. And the mother rabbit would come back day after day and sit on this flower pot. So I called, and I can't remember.
I'm pretty sure you talked to me. I remember.
And I was told I wanted to get the mother rabbit trapped and moved somewhere, so if she had another litter. And the city didn't come through here, and it was not very responsive, I don't think. And I was very bitter about that, and still am.
Well, I'll just quickly answer and say that we don't really have the training and experience to handle wildlife. We do if they're injured, but it's also considered by professionals to be inhumane to relocate wildlife. So we are not in the business of doing that because they don't know where their food, water sources are, etc.
Well, I was talking about moving the animal 2 blocks or 3 blocks. I don't think we're moving it to Washtuckner or something.
Well,
typically though, we don't deal with wildlife issues. Like when somebody calls up and says there's a deer downtown and it's walking on the road.
We should, or someone should.
Don't you have to call the state to get that?
Well, when we have incidences of like a moose in someone's backyard, we have involved state wildlife, and they have come and tranquilized it and sawn off the antlers and hauled it out of the backyard. And that was kind of an extreme case where, it was a nuisance here in town for a while, but I think in most cases, we've gotten reports of bears in town, and when it's a dangerous animal, we'll monitor it. And if it looked like it was going to endanger somebody, then we would take action. But otherwise, our guidelines are pretty much just to make sure it gets out of town safely or make sure that people don't interfere with it. The trapping just isn't a service we provide. I've got 5 or 6 raccoons in my backyard. They're there every night, and it's like I really want to take like an airsoft gun and drive them away, but that would be harassing wildlife, and you're not allowed to do that. So there's some things we just put up with. I don't want to pay a trapper.
yeah, usually the state wildlife officers, they want to be called on moose, bear, cougar, and that's pretty much it. Unless there's some kind of a danger to neighborhood people in the area, like a deer is out of control and, you know, aggressing on people. Injured animals too, it's fend for themselves. Like the university won't take a deer with a broken leg or anything like that. They'll take maybe a fawn or injured small animals that I'm able to transport there. So I do a fair amount of that, but that's about as involved with the wildlife as we get. So, and I am a wildlife lover, so I would go to any means that I could, but also with the interest of the animal in mind is important. So
another question is how dynamic is city code? As the population grows, how does city code change? Are there new regulations as population growth happens? And how can a citizen involve themselves in influencing city code regulation?
Do you have an idea of what part of city code?
Anything, like if...
I can tell you from my personal experience that when I moved into where we live now, which is on College Hill, that the definition of an R1 zone as far as population goes is it was a family plus 2 unrelated people. And what that translates into for people in the renting world is 4 unrelated people. And there was, congestion with vehicles. We were fortunate to have the rugby team just a couple houses up, and there's fights in the street and things like that.
Okay, that's not our fault.
And our neighborhood came together, and we had council members meeting at our house, and and basically through their efforts, they got the code changed so that it was a family plus 1 unrelated person. And that made it more difficult for those neighborhoods to be seen as lucrative rental areas. And so that's a change. And then I know that as far as animals go, I'm not sure if it's legal now, but potbelly pigs, hasn't that been changed?
Yep.
And so it's citizens coming to council, and talking to city officials and getting on the agenda and kind of planting the seed. And then oftentimes the city attorney has to do research and make sure that what council proposes is going to be, not be challenged for one reason or another.
I think the nuisance ordinance was the last thing that besides the potbelly pigs is, I can't remember what year it was, 2009 or 2000, that was enacted, and that was borrowed from someone else's city code. And so was the potbelly pig ordinance, was from somewhere down in like Yakima area. So if you have something that you would like to see implemented, you can bring forth things that other people have done successfully. I think the concern too is they don't want something that hasn't succeeded elsewhere to maybe, it will be harder to pass something like that. But if there's something that there's an interest that you have that other people have tried and tested, then I think it's worth bringing.
And the noise ordinance is a good example of that. That's one that we did not have before. But, when I was in school, for a group to have a loud party meant hiring a band. And now it seems like every living group has a loud enough stereo that they can project it all the way across town. And so it was a kind of a change of technology and that generated the noise ordinance. And with the nuisance ordinance, that was enacted, and we didn't actively enforce it for a while, but once we started actively going up and warning people and then ticketing them, it took about 6 months for, I think, the kind of the landscape on College Hill to change. But again, you get new people moving in every couple of years, and they don't know or don't care, and they need to be educated. And in the meantime, it's the year-round neighbors that kind of pay the price.
I'd like a clarification. I didn't make myself clear initially. I asked if the city trapped skunks. Years ago, this was probably 20 years ago now, and I can't remember all the details. We lived over on Military Hill, and a neighbor was having trouble with skunks, and she told me she called the city and they trapped the skunks.
That might have been something I did once, and then I decided I will never do that again. And it wasn't really part of my job description either, so I have trapped one skunk and that went poorly, so.
But
I know that we typically refer
there
them
needs to be some consistency in policy. Either you help a constituent when he or she calls about an animal problem, or you don't.
We do not do animal or live animal trapping for wildlife now. That's That's what I've been doing for about probably 9 years. I might have done a trap or two once, and then I just learned that that wasn't the wise thing
All
to
the
do.
cases I review, they indicate they refer them to a trapping service.
Yeah.
I wasn't referred.
You said that was about 20 years ago?
No, I wasn't referred on this rabbit.
The rabbit would be euthanized if it was trapped. So that is what a trapper does. They will euthanize it. They don't relocate anything. So, and they have permits and everything to do that kind of thing, which is why we like to refer them to the trappers.
So did you speak to a code enforcement officer about the rabbit? Was it
That was probably me.
probably you?
I
Well, we certainly strive to
have
be
thought to refer to a
consistent
trapper on
in our responses, given that a lot of situations have different circumstances surrounding them. But, so I apologize if you weren't referred to a trapper.
Well, I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if I wanted to be, to tell you the truth. Just an unfortunate circumstance, I guess. But it was terrible to see that mother rabbit come back to that. We've got a big pot out on their patio with flowers in it. She came back there for probably 3 weeks.
Look, man,
Looking for
are you trying to make us
all
all
the
cry
little
on
bunnies were
video
gone.
here, or?
It was tough living with my wife here.
One complaint I have heard about and wondered if this falls under nuisance is wafting marijuana smoke.
I don't know what could be done about that, but that would probably be Sam.
Well, and unless the smoke is from somebody smoking it illegally,
In their own residence, but
it's-
going into windows.
it's no different than, we would treat that no differently than somebody smelling cigarette smoke.
Okay.
There's just, and oftentimes when people live in federally assisted housing, they have, they fall under federal statute, so they're not supposed to be smoking marijuana. And we do get those calls. We have to explain that we can't enforce federal law.
Great. Thank you.
We gotta have other questions. This is code. This is fun stuff.
You think of anything your neighbor does that annoys you,
Oh,
it probably
Steve has a
falls
lot of
under
questions.
code violations. So.
So when it comes to like littering and stuff like that and throwing stuff in the street, if no one sees it, like how does something like that get handled?
I think if it's a large enough amount of litter and we can't identify who it belongs to, then I would forward that to the Parks Department, actually, which is what I do for couches and the planting strips where you can't tell who they came from. Large items that get dumped that you can't identify, I will forward to them and they will remove it. So if it's a giant pile of garbage that we can't identify, I don't know about 10 pieces of litter or something like that would be maybe a different
Well,
story, but
if it's broken glass, then
Yeah.
we can refer the street, Public
Hazardous
Works could send a street
stuff.
sweeper out. If you're the poor guy or person that has the yard that the wind blows all the litter to, the code talks about allowing an accumulation of litter. And so even though it's not your fault, the fact that it's on your property makes you responsible for making sure it's cleaned up and disposed of properly.
But we can narrow down who it might come from and
If it's
deal with
stuff
them as
that
well.
has, if we can tell where it comes from, we'd certainly talk to the people responsible. But if you're talking about just groups of people walking down the street littering, especially like after a game, there's not a lot we can do.
There's a lot of trash cans that get blown over on Sunnyside Hill when it's windy. So we end up getting a lot of trash. It looks like we have litters, like people littering in our neighborhood, but we really probably don't have that many people.
Just when.
Yeah, more people letting their dogs poop everywhere than anything, but
Do you want to talk about that?
sure. Yeah, we might as well talk
Well, that's
about
something that when people call up and complain, Liz will tell you how she investigates it or what it
Most
takes.
of the time, I gotta see that in, I gotta be able to really say in a probable cause statement that it came from this dog, this owner, you watch this, or I have pictures or that kind of thing, unless I see it by my, on my own. I can issue an infraction through the court if it's not viewed by me. But if you have a good statement for me and good evidence that it was this dog, here's the here's the stuff, then I can issue tickets for that. A lot of stuff that I'm dealing with though is like an accumulation of feces in a yard, and that is under the nuisance ordinance. It's an offensive foul matter, so I can issue tickets for that, make them clean it up. But you can always call in, take photos, refer them to me, and I can follow up as best as I can with the dog owner. If you can tell me what the dog owner looks like and what the dog looks like, I have a pretty good chance of being able to say, oh, I've identified them positively and I know that it came from this dog and this owner, so yeah.
Do we have any questions from the audience? No?
We have a public input that came in through email or through the website, and it kind of pertains to dogs and the city code and that type of thing. And I don't have a dog, but I guess Pullman, you have to have a license to have a dog, is that correct? And
Yeah,
they have to have the
within
rabies
30
shot or
days
something.
of having it in the city, you have to have a license.
How do you reach out to new people moving it down and let them know that? Or is that just something they find out the first time they get in trouble for not having it?
They will find out about it if I deal with, like, if I approach them for some complaint.
Okay.
That's like my standard thing is, even if maybe someone wants me to talk to them nicely about the leash law, then I'll just add that all in. And the way I end out my case is they either comply within a week or two, or they get their ticket. So, it depends on how approachable the person is, if you wanted to get involved or if you wanted to call me. And I wouldn't say I make it a matter of proactively telling everyone that has a dog that, oh, do you have a license? But generally speaking, I mean, I could if you called it in and you wanted me to. But I wouldn't probably proactively do that. I got a lot of other things to do, so. But of course, anyone who complains.
Another point they mention is that when they do go in to get the license, there's very few like instructions or anything about the rules and the laws in the city. Do you guys hand out anything or give them anything, or just kind of give them the license?
I would say that they are probably issued the license. By that time, they know that the dog has to be vaccinated for rabies. We do not have a pamphlet for that. I have a pamphlet. We could put it in the front. I thought we did at one time. It's something I also hand out when I'm dealing with people on calls. I'll be like, here's the information, here's what you pay, here's how you bring in with the paperwork. And then also I have all the other Pullman regulations, leash law, vicious animal, cleaning them after your dog, number of dogs allowed, all that kind of stuff. So we have the pamphlet. We can make sure it keeps stocked out front. Yeah.
You know if it's on the website?
Oh, I'm sure they have the animal control website page that has all that on there. It should have. I've submitted something to somebody for it. So, and I have all the information anyways. It would be very easy to add if it's not already added.
Is there a heading in the phone book or whatever for animal control? There wasn't once a year or so ago when I had some problems walking my dog down at City Playfield, and Chief Jenkins said they were going to put a heading in the phone book or whatever under city government animal control.
I don't know. There's a fresh stack of phone books over there, and I can look and get back to you on it.
Well, I can look too.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure.
But there wasn't a year or so ago.
They also recommended maybe taking pictures of dogs when they get licensed. Do you guys have like identification of the dogs on file, or?
What we do is we have a description of the breed, the sex, the color. It can be probably done. I'm not sure where we would attach those files. And that would then probably fall to the receptionist to take the pictures, and then they would also have to bring their dog in. So, or they could submit their own photos. We could say email your photos to this, something like that, and we could probably attach it to their name file, which is what we do with the all the paperwork they fill out, all the rabies paperwork we get, we scan it in, and that way we have it to look back on, like for, say if someone got bit by a certain dog that was licensed, we can go make sure they were current. at the time the dog was biting the person. So we can put it all in with that information and have a description there. I'm really good at remembering who I've contacted before. So, but it was not a bad idea.
Thank you. Stephen? No? One more thing is, do you guys enforce when people throw like cigarette butts out the window and things like that of their cars, or is that something that's not enforced?
If we see it happen, we would enforce it.
Okay,
And it's a hefty fine, as I
Yeah.
recall.
okay.
$250.
I just better start pulling out my cell phone and snapping some photos.
A lot of these things have to be committed in an officer's presence.
Right, yeah.
And if you were videoing somebody on your phone, we could send send it to the court, and then the court would have to issue it.
A lot of work.
You know, some people need that kind of enforcement.
Yeah, I think even just the trouble of having to go either pay it or go to court or anything like that it can change behavior. Did anybody have any questions about dog bites or dangerous animals or anything like that? No?
How many do you get? I mean, is this a common complaint?
Well, and a vicious animal complaint can be anything from the dog charged me to the dog actually bit me or just bruised me, anything like that. We can consider and define a dangerous animal as anything that approaches in a vicious and terrorizing manner. So there's a whole array of behavior that we can use to define and declare dogs dangerous. I would say I might get a vicious animal call like probably 3 times a month, maybe. On average, that's just kind of going off the top of my head. I have a list of how many we have declared, and I don't have that memorized or anything with me. But we keep track of all those dogs, and they're required to wear muzzles when they're off the owner's premises. So, and they get heftier fines if they do not obey those restrictions. So, yeah.
Have we made any changes in the dogs biting other animals?
That is still in the works. Basically, what happened a lot of time is a dog will bite another dog or aggress on another dog, and they'll get an injury, and there's nothing in city code that will allow me to write a ticket for that behavior. So I've suggested that we add that as an infraction because that helps get a little closure. Sometimes people they don't necessarily think the dog was aggressive or vicious naturally, and it just happened. And they want some enforcement, but they don't want to have that dog owner have those regulations over their head or anything. We can use a little discretion, and an infraction would be nice in that kind of scenario. So some kind of a fine, something. Yeah.
And it's different if it's in like the dog park where they sign liability forms to utilize it and things like that, or can they still take it?
It's still city property, so if we got not city property, but the jurisdiction is still there. If someone reports it is the thing. A lot of those dog owners are just like hush hush. They don't want to tell on anyone, and they don't want to get anyone in trouble. Some do though, and we'll follow up just like any other complaint. So.
Any other questions? Thank you, Liz Schaeffer, very much. That was great.
Apologize for being late.
Thank you, Sam Sorem. That was a great presentation.
You can stay for the rest of it.
Sure.
I'm sure we'll be wrapping up soon. We already did our constituency poll. So do we have any public comment that people would like on record? Or, oh, yep, sorry, Matt.
Oh, no, that's fine. I actually had a couple questions. First one's for Sergeant Sam. I was talking to, or Darby, if you might know, I was talking to Chief right before school got out, and I arranged a meeting with Foley Institute to see if he could do presentations for incoming students, if that would be something appropriate. And he said he was going to follow up on that and talk to the Foley Institute. I was wondering if there was any eventual follow-up on the result of all that.
I have no idea.
The last I heard, I think he sent them a list of prospective dates and then didn't hear back, but I have not heard anything since then. And I think that was like months ago when that was fresh. So they probably need a new list of dates if that's something they're looking at.
I will go have a serious chat with some senior officials. Okay.